So on her face in particular, it's just subtle. You don't necessarily need to have it really super strong, but in the background we've actually made quite a change. Hi, and welcome to another episode of Photoshop 101. In this episode I'm going to go through some dodging and burning. I'm going to show you a few different ways you can do it, which is destructively and non-destructively, and perhaps show you a few different reasons why it can be really good to do. So for starters, when you go through your panel on the side here, you can actually do some dodging and burning directly from here on your image. So you've got a little tab that you can hold out, and that gives you your dodge tool and your burn tool. All it really means is we're going to be lightening and darkening specific areas of your image. So think of turning this image to black and white, which I've already done, as a global change, so that's changed the whole thing. And now we're going to be doing some localized changes. So if we were to use the dodge tool, I've made a duplicate of my background layer, and we'll come up, we've got various tools along here that we can use. So what we're going to do is we're going to work in the mid-tones with a fairly soft brush. We can change the size as we need to. We'll break this down to about 15%. We can change it up if we need to. Protect tones is probably good if you're working in colour, but we're just working in black and white on this level. So I'm just going to come in, just making my brush just a little bit smaller. I'm going to come through and I'm going to do some dodging along her cheeks and her nose. Pretty much where your highlights currently are, I'm just going to be accenting. So you can do some in her eyes. And perhaps a little bit on her forehead. Come along and you can highlight various things like her earrings, put a bit of sparkle. I might want to highlight some of her hair. Obviously things like the collarbone, you're going to have some highlight through there, along the shoulders. Now that's doing your dodge. If we come in and switch to burn, keeping it probably a bit low to around about the 20%, 15 to 20% again, and we're going to come in and now we're going to put in some of the highlights, shadows. And you just keep it soft. We can build it up as we go. You don't have to have it all done in one layer. Just gradually build it up, add some more depth to it, put some shadows in, and that gives you the idea. Bit of hair. We can come along and we can do some in the background as well. So that's turning it off, and that's turning it back on. You can take it to extremes and you can really change the look of somebody's face by doing some dodging and burning. Now this is what they refer to as destructive dodging and burning. Even though I've got that layer here, If I was to do that on my background layer, there's nothing I can do about it. I can't change it. If I decide that there's something I don't like and I want to redo it, I really can't change it. It's destructive. So what I generally do, just get rid of that layer and put in a new layer. If I come in and I do add a new layer, and that's just by pressing Control Shift and N, this brings up this panel. Now if I change this to overlay and click this fill overlay with neutral color 50% grey and click OK, it puts this grey layer on. Now this is what they call 50% grey. It is completely neutral. Doesn't matter how many times I turn it on, turn it off, you can't see what I've done. Now you can still use the dodge and burn if you like. I just tend to stick with the brush, to be honest, and just using black and white and I put my opacity down to about 15%, put my flow down to about 15%, and working through your highlights and your shadows, you can get the same sort of look but without being destructive. So just working a little bit at a time, and you're working on this layer here, and you're coming through adjusting your brush as required. Same again, just putting highlights through where you would normally expect to see them. Working with what's already in the image and just bringing it out further. If you switch to black, and you can do that by just pressing the X key, that just toggles backwards and forwards between the black and the white. You can then come through and add your shadows in. So doing your burn layer. Now this is no different to what photographers used to use in a darkroom. Dodging and burning to add in highlights and shadows. All we're using Photoshop for is just a digital darkroom. Now you can continue working on that until you've had enough, till you get it to where you want it. That's turning it off, turning it on. And all I'm doing is deepening the shadows and bringing the highlights out a little bit more. Now that's on overlay. If I was to turn it back to normal, that's essentially what I've just done, is I've just painted in the highlights and the shadows. Now if I make a mistake, I'll just pop that back, and decide I don't like anything, I can come into here and pick 50% grey, and I can paint back over the top of that, and it's back to the start, like it never happened. I can also, if I want to, if I decide perhaps I went a little bit too strong, I can change the opacity of that layer as well. And you can add multiple layers. So I can come in and I can put another one. make that 50% grey, and I can come out a little bit. Hitting D changes your black and white, that'll bring it back to default. So with my black, I can come in and I can just work on the background if I wish to. So I can keep my model Jess on one layer, while working on the background in another layer. So that's just dodging burn in the background. Now, why you'd want to add dodge and burn, it's just another tool that you can use to create some more depth and drama in an image. This one is quite an old school glamour, sort of Hollywood type nighttime scene. The makeup, the hair, the pose, the backdrop, it could be anything, but using the dodge and burn, we've made it so much more dramatic than it was to start with. Another really good reason for using dodge and burn is if you need to change your light source, or if you've got a bit of a light leak or something like that that's distracting in the image. So for instance here, I really don't like this bit just here, so I'm going to come through and we're going to change that to black, and I'm going to burn that out. So it's really not as distracting as it was before. Changing that back to white, I can then add, if I want to, a little bit of detail on that lock and the bar through there. If I can come in and I can add some more highlight to this wall, or if I had a bit of light leak that was coming through here, I can come in and I can burn that. Now, there is another method that you can use, and that's just putting in just a blank layer, and just with a black brush or a white brush you can come in and you can paint in your shadows, keeping your opacity quite down and doing it that way, and you can. That's not an issue. You would want to keep your whites and your blacks on separate layers just to avoid confusion. If you do make a mistake, you can fix it, because you can go in with your eraser, which is this one here, and you can erase something that you've put on. But in a lot of regards, it's still a bit destructive. You can drop your opacity down on that particular layer, as you can see. It all does the same effect, it just depends on what you're comfortable with. Personally, for myself, I really like using the 50% layer. So that's it for this week. Next week we'll go in for some sharpening and maybe use a smudge tool, go through a few filters and maybe some overlays. So that's it. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and bye for now.